Is there any specific stories you can share with us? Like something that stood out to you maybe, or...
Yeah, like just like cases or something here in
that you are allowed to speak about.
Yeah, no, I've got one that the case is over. And it's a big success story, so I like to share it. But it happened. I'll still leave some details out.
Yeah.
But it happened just here east of Pretoria, and it was a cult, a religious cult, and we've run into that several times.
Wow.
Because of the mindset. You talk about grooming.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to believe their pastor, especially when their pastor is abusing it, saying, God told me to do this, XYZ.
And welcome to another episode. This one, as you obviously can hear, is in English, and because I've got an American here with me, Amy. You've heard about Amy because 2 weeks ago we did an episode with Unchain, our children, with Wayne and Adriaan, and they made the suggestion that we get Amy on because she's a firecracker.
That's how they describe
That's
me.
what they said.
Great.
In Afrikaans.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and she's passionate about the work that you guys are doing, and so it's awesome to have an American in the studio. Though she's pretty much a South African now, she just doesn't have our accent yet. You've been here in South Africa?
Almost 6 years.
Almost 6 years.
In a couple of weeks, it'll be our 6-year anniversary.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you came for a sabbatical.
Well, I came to do this. I came to work with NGOs to fight human trafficking. So I was a police officer for 14 years back in the States. Yeah. And just kind of switched modes. Still loved law enforcement. Still loved, doing some justice work. Yeah. And this is where I found myself.
That's awesome, man. Go where the Lord takes you.
That's it.
But welcome.
Yeah.
It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
My first American.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, my first American. I've got a friend who lives in California, in Hollywood actually.
Oh wow.
But he's a outspoken Christian.
Okay.
And him and his wife works in the movie industry.
Wow.
And she works for Showtime.
Okay.
So she's like high up at Showtime, and it's like I've tried to get him on the show a couple of times, but he's like, dude, it's so difficult for me to speak about this stuff, about Christianity and the entertainment industry, because they don't mix. And I'm sure you guys had a few run-ins with the entertainment industry.
Oh yeah.
Over through your work, but just give us a little bit of background on yourself, and then we can jump into the actual topic of.
Cool. Yeah. So I was born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee. Lived there for 40 years of my life until we came here. Yeah. Basically. Sure. So, like I said, did law enforcement for 14 years. Absolutely loved it. I did everything from just being a street cop to doing some domestic violence detective work. Yeah. And then I trained cops for a while at the police academy. I was the drill instructor. I was the mean one who said that they sucked and they should quit and all this stuff, and yelled over them. And I was very fit, and we'd run and do all this stuff with them. But we're just trying to weed out those who can't handle it. Yeah. Did that for a while, and then I became a supervisor on the street, and ended my career there doing that, and loved it. And then heard that law enforcement could be used in other countries to fight human trafficking. Yeah. And that was brand new information to me. Yeah. I was hooked the moment I heard it. Yeah. And I thought, this is what I think I'm meant to do. So I just spent a lot of time praying and fasting and trying to figure out where the Lord wanted me to go. Yeah. Didn't want my wants to take us someplace. Yeah. So talked to a few NGOs and stuff, and told one, I said, look, I'll go anywhere in the world you want us to. Yeah. I'm not picking the country. Like, that's too much pressure for me to uproot my family and think that sounds cool. And then they put me here. Sure. So, and then I found Unchain Our Children. Yeah. A couple years later, had worked often with Wayne because of his police background. We always got along really well and understood each other super well. Yeah. So, that's how I got here.
That's awesome. And it's been 6 years. So kids?
Yep, I've got 2 kids.
Yeah.
And they've been here for more than half their life now.
Yeah.
So one has a very good South African accent.
Oh, really?
She'll fool people, yeah.
Okay.
They're out on the playground or out with other kids. She definitely can sound just like she belongs here.
Do they know Afrikaans?
No. No, and people ask me that all the time. And the thing is, our little community in Four Ways and our church is super diverse.
Yeah.
So when we came here, we thought, obviously you go to another country, you think, oh, let's learn another language, especially for the kids.
Yeah.
And we didn't know which one to pick.
Yeah.
Like we had friends who spoke, Zulu, and tons of friends from Zim, and so is it Ndebele, is it Shona, is it?
Yeah.
And we finally, and my husband speaks Spanish.
Oh, really?
And I know Spanish, more than any other language. I'm not fluent.
Yeah.
And we just thought, let's just teach them. It sounds ironic, but let's teach them Spanish and Latin.
Yeah, but Spanish is it's also a massive language.
Yes, and Latin is the root of a bunch of languages, and they're homeschooled, and that's what Latin is the curriculum what they've given them. So we're on that train.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. So high school now.
No. They're middle school, 5th grade. Grade 5, yeah.
Yeah, middle school.
Yeah, they're twins. So when I say they're both twins. The same. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, identical.
No.
Okay.
No, one looks like me, one looks like him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's the hand of God, eh?
Yeah.
It's like,
you definitely tell that we all fit together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so Amy, Unchain Our Children. We had you guys, if you haven't watched the episode with Wayne and Ian, and if you prefer to watch something in Afrikaans, then you can go there. But it's 2 weeks ago, and it was an incredible discussion that we had about just making people aware of human trafficking and the possibilities that it's actually the realization rather that it happens all around us, and that they mentioned cases from Menlyn, which is like 10 k's away, and cases from Sinnerville, which is like just on my stoop. And so this is to create awareness around this, because we had one video, and Amy is aware of this. I'm just informing you guys. Sorry, the English is challenging for me. You guys, that of what happened and why we decided to place more emphasis on this, because it's so necessary. And one of our short reels went viral, semi-viral on TikTok with close to 100,000 views, and we got a ton of messages from people that said this happened to them. And it's female, it's male, it's grown-ups, it's people like in their 40s that lived through this, and it saddens me so much. I told Wayne, he sent me a case you guys are reopening apparently, of a case in Camps Bay or Cape Town. Yeah. And he sent me this reel that you got, and I told him, this gives me chills, man. It actually makes me nauseous. It makes me sick to see that people live through this. Yeah. And this guy was I know we can't go into it because it's an open case again, but just on what's available, this guy was actually someone that shouldn't have been involved in something like this, because he should have been he's in the position where you have to fight this thing. So according to you and your experience in this field, just explain to people what it is and what you guys are fighting.
Yeah, so trafficking excuse me, by law, it's acts, means, and purpose, and all trafficking is for exploitation, but not all exploitation is trafficking. Yeah. So there's a fine line there, and I do a lot of training with police officers and Department of Social Development and other government officials, and I'm trying to teach them that line. Grooming is a big part of it, because when you get groomed, you get desensitized. Yeah. And because the internet and social media especially, it really, anyone can be affected. Yeah. a few decades ago, it probably would have just targeted the poor areas, and the poor are the most vulnerable, and so they are a big target group. But now we're showing vulnerabilities, our emotional vulnerabilities on social media when people want to just talk about how they feel all the time.
Yeah.
There's people out there who can pick up on that.
Yeah.
Some scams turn into grooming, and then turns into sextortion, and then it might meet the definition of trafficking. So that's why it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's such a hidden crime.
Yeah.
We had a thing down in another province where disabled girl was trafficked in her home every day and never left the bed because she physically couldn't leave the bed.
Yeah.
But her mother was selling her for sex.
Sure.
So no one knew about it. And so that's why it can be very hidden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why? Why is it so hidden? You mentioned the term sextortion and extortion. Is it because of that?
It's hidden because it's
obviously a crime. So yes, it's hidden. It's like any crime, it has to be hidden.
Yeah.
But
so sextortion is extortion for sex. So it's blackmailing somebody.
Yeah.
So what happens, familiar scenario I often teach is, let's say, and I'm going to use a young male because we often think this doesn't happen to boys, and it does, and men. But let's say a young man is on a gaming app, and he starts to chat with somebody. You can chat on all these things. You don't have to know who they are, right? Yeah. So starts to chat, and maybe the person's male, but is pretending to be a female. Maybe sends a new photo or a photo of just a bra. He does it back, and then all of a sudden it's 50,000 rand, and your whole school sees this.
Sure.
And that's leading a lot of kids into suicide.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid to tell their parents.
Yeah.
So, it's just a growing, and then child sexual abuse material.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the new term for child porn.
Yeah.
CSAM, fastest growing crime in the world.
Sure.
Because it's all on the internet.
Yeah.
And people can look like they're having normal lives, but then have this big secret that's going on.
Yeah, that's crazy. And just on your point about this happening to, girls and boys, male and female, I read this morning on the US government website that it's in South Africa specifically, it's 55% female, 55.5 I think, and 44.5
yeah,
male.
it's roughly, it's just a little bit towards, sometimes it says 60-40, but there's not a huge difference.
Yeah.
We've had cases where little boys are told they want to go to soccer trials, and they're not in soccer trials, and they go to another country to train, and the parents never hear from them again. So, they'll use any opportunity you have. You got so many vulnerable people here. Yeah. This country. I'm not sure if Wayne talked about the Gini coefficient or anything with you. Do you know what that is?
No. Maybe you said it in Afrikaans.
Maybe. Well, a lot of people don't know what that is. So, but Gini coefficient or Gini index measures the income inequality of any given country. Yes. And South Africa has been the highest for a long, long time. Yeah. So we're sitting, the highest in unemployment. Yes. So we're sitting on a large pool of vulnerable people. Yeah. So it's kind of easy pickings, if I were to put it lightly. Yeah.
He said he did mention the fact that South Africa is a destination, a source
and a transit
country as well.
Yeah. So not all your countries are gonna, everyone's gonna fall into one or two, but it's really makes us special and unique that you're gonna hit all three. Sure. Yeah. I mean, we touch. What is it, 6 countries here? It's 5 or 6. I think it's 6. Yeah. You got 2 oceans. Yeah. You got a ton of ports. Yeah. I was training with DHA the other day, and I was looking up some stuff to home affairs. Yeah. And there's 71 ports. Sure. Ports of entry into this country.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. That's a ton.
That's crazy.
It's a lot. And so, all it takes is a little bit of corruption, and a porous border. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily under-policed, but corruption is a big thing.
Yeah, no, corruption is a huge thing. Yeah. And then there's so many factors going into that. I mean, it's easy to bribe somebody when they're not making a fair wage. They're underpaid, right? Which I think pretty much any government official would say that they are. Yeah. They say that back in America too, but But when you're underpaid and when you're not taught, they just don't know.
Yeah.
And then there's just no accountability. Yeah. That's the thing I've been talking about for years.
Yeah.
I think a couple weeks after my husband and I and our family came here, we kind of pinned it. We kind of nailed it. We saw it in some place simple and we're like, oh, it's accountability.
Yeah.
There's not accountability here.
Yeah.
And when I think about that affects everything.
Yes.
So yes. I kind of just simplify it and say there's not accountability from the president on down to the person who serves you food.
Yeah.
Like, an order is wrong. This is maybe just my Americanism coming out because we demand for things to be right.
Yeah.
Maybe in a loud and obnoxious way.
Yeah.
But people here are so used to it.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of people fighting it.
Yeah.
And I understand that. And I've told people, I said, look, I understand you're tired of beating your head against the wall, saying this is wrong, I need it right, nothing gets done. Mm. But I just kind of urge South Africans not to give up because it is the right thing to do.
Yeah,
to speak up against
and
it.
we can.
Mm-hmm.
We can mm-hmm. rally behind mm-hmm. something. We definitely can. We have the ability to do that. I mean, if you look at like how South Africa rallies behind the Springboks, for instance.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
And it's like, why can't we have this passion for things? I mean, rugby is beautiful. It's one of my favorite sports. I was a rugby player and I worked for the Blue Bulls Rugby Union for 10 years. So rugby is like we say in South Africa, it's in my blood. Yeah. You know, but I mean, there are more important things than sport. Yeah. Right? Like we are working with people and we are working with lives. And that's why awareness is so important to me. But you said something about accountability and responsibility. It ties to responsibility as well. And this, in my opinion, coming from a background, you know, not as a worker in your field, it's like it starts at home. Mm-hmm. And the responsibility of parents are much larger than we anticipate, than we realize. Yeah. And maybe, yes, there are, we have to mention, and you mentioned the internet as well, there are massive changes. In the last 30 years, technology has just exploded into a new territory for us, and we are figuring things out, and the internet is there, and your kids are on Roblox, and they're on like Modern Warfare, and they're playing online, and they're speaking to other people, and like, it makes our responsibility so much more than what my parents, for instance, had.
Well, and the issue is too, we don't know, and I say we, I say kind of like my generation, like also Gen Xers, we don't know all the technology that's out there. We don't know how to deal with it as parents. I see that all the time. People my age just think the phone is okay, just think the games are okay. Yeah. And they don't understand the dangers themselves, and I think they're intimidated to find out. There's too many apps. Apps are growing all the time. It's hard for them to understand. I don't know what my kid is doing on this app. Yeah. So my advice is you get on the app. Yes. Not to monitor necessarily, but to understand what is possible on the app. Yes. So, you know, it's social media came out in 2012. And the rate of anxiety and mental illness that have hit everybody, especially girls, from that generation on, that generation Gen Z that grew up, they were the first generation to have social media when they hit puberty. Yeah. And it's made a massive difference. Yeah. So, there's, you know, you can't put a roadblock. You can put some safety measures on phones and stuff, but it's only got to slow it down. Yeah. It's up to the parent. It's up to the responsible adult. Yeah. And I'm not saying technology is bad because we need it. Our kids need to know how to use it. I mean, if my kids never hopped on a computer, they're going to be lost in the workforce. You know, they're not going to know how to operate anything. Yeah. But you as a parent, you as an adult have to understand how to help them. Yeah. And Wayne said something that was very interesting to me. He also mentioned like not becoming that helicopter parent. Yeah. And what you're saying now is don't monitor everything. Yeah. But he also said that you, as a parent, are legally liable for your children's activity on devices.
And that, like, I'm getting goosebumps.
He hits that at school talks whenever we go out. He talks about that a lot.
Yeah, but it's important to realize.
It is. You're responsible. To sign up for social media, all a kid has to do, technically, by law, is be 13. And all they have to do is check a box. There is no parental permission to have an account. There's none of that. And hopefully that'll change. But as we know, just because there's a law in place doesn't mean, just because it says here the legal age is 18 to drink doesn't mean people are not going to drink sooner, right?
Yeah.
But it does help a little bit. But yeah, parents have got to know. Yeah. And when I hear parents say, if I took my phone away from my kid, they'd flip out.
That's fine.
And I say,
Let them flip
out. Yeah. But that's because they're already so addicted to it. Yeah. And the other issue is, some of us are addicted to it. So if our kids are watching us, I was reading, there's a guy named Brad Huddleston who's written a bunch of books called Digital Cocaine and Digital Rehab. And he always says, I've written them for our generation, not your kids' generation. Because there's brilliant quotes where, like, young children are saying, can you come over here and take the phone away from my mother? Sure. Kids are having to fight through our attention span. Yeah. Instead of being like this. Yeah. And that's sad, eh? Yeah.
I just wanted
a lot of happy topics coming from me, a lot of good news.
But I'm just thinking, like, I'm just putting myself in that position, like in the shoes of my children, and I think how often I'm guilty of this. Like how often because my wife and I both work from home, so we go and fetch them at school like at 2:00 in the afternoon, and then they come home and we still work. Right. But and then you're on your phone the whole time. You're with them, but you're not there. Yep. But you kind of justify it.
Because you're working.
Yeah, exactly.
I do too. Yeah. I do too. And then, it's really hard. I'm more conscious of it because of books I've read and things I've listened to. And I try to set a time, or if I am doing it, I tell my child, I'm sorry, this is work, so they don't think I'm, doing whatever. And then you just try to have your phone in other areas of the room. Like dinner time, I try to have it in my bedroom where I can't hear it. It can go off all at once and I can't hear it. Or if I'm spending time with them, if I could just have it someplace else, I'm not tempted.
Yes.
Yes.
So just back on the phone and kids with phones, my daughter has a phone, and I think a lot of the viewers are sighing now. And I'm sighing too.
Sorry.
No, it's fine because we didn't have a lot of restrictions on the phone at first, and then we actually started seeing her grades go down, and we started seeing spending too much time on the phone. And I don't think anything happened because we check it off like every single day. We check all the messages, we check the activity, everything. Yeah. And there's nothing strange going on, but just again that it acts exactly like an addiction.
It is an addiction. Yeah. It's just as addictive as cocaine. Yeah. That's why the guy named this one book Digital Cocaine. He was brilliant. But it gives us, every time we hear that ding or that notification, it's a hit of dopamine. Yeah. Same hit of dopamine we get with sex or drugs. Yeah. And it's very addictive. Yeah. And then what happens is you get used to that. Yeah. And then you want more and more and more. Yeah. And so it's exactly how any addiction works. Yeah. So I've had parents ask me, when do you give your kid a phone? When do you do something?
I was just about to ask that. So.
And I had a feeling it was coming. So I kind of joke and I say 25 when their brain is fully developed. Yeah. But I know that's unreasonable. Yeah. But their brain isn't developed till they're 25. The frontal lobe, where they actually make the decisions. And whenever I hear that, I think back of all the decisions I made before 25. Not that 25 was a magic number and all of a sudden I was making amazing choices. I wasn't. But I've heard an expert say 14 for phones, 16 social media. And that's just kind of a good general guideline. If someone really wants a number, that's what I say. And if your kid, you hear people say, my kid needs a phone. What if they have to get a hold of me? Whatever. Okay, it doesn't have to be a smartphone. They still sell the old phones.
Yeah.
So if the excuse you're giving yourself and your kid is giving you is I need to get a hold of you. What about emergencies? Then give them a flip phone. Give them a, I mean, they can still text.
Yeah.
Texting is okay communication. The trouble with the brain and the anxiety and the mental illnesses are coming from
social media.
Yeah. It's the comparisons.
Yeah.
It's the comparisons and it's the addiction of the likes, and I'm just nervous that kids aren't going to be able to just properly communicate in a couple decades.
Yeah.
Because of the cancel culture and everything else.
I listened to this one podcast by John Aldridge, and he spoke about this. He spoke about like the communication and how communication evolved over the last 10 years. I mean, it's not even a decade, and it's crazy how much it changed. And he said one of the things that like gets grinds his gears is when he shoots someone a text, and they, WhatsApp has that thing where you just reply with an emoji or something on the text.
Does it bother him?
He says that's the worst thing, and he says like that's the way people. It's moving that way. It's like people are just gonna be talking in pictures.
Yeah.
And
I wonder, like, is someone in my kids' generation going to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody and have a proper conversation? Like,
I struggle with that.
I get lazy with it. Part of it is because I deal with a lot of people here that's not my culture, and they don't understand my accent at first.
Yeah.
And if I cold call somebody, I feel like it's a disaster. So I will always WhatsApp someone first.
Yeah.
To give them a chance to kind of soak in what I'm saying.
I'm American.
And, or I'll leave a voice note.
Yes.
And I actually often hope they leave me a voice note back, because if their accent is thick, and whatever the many cultures you have down here, I have time to absorb it, or I can replay it.
Yeah.
So I'm guilty of it as well. Yeah. But I just remember as a kid, you call your neighbor, you call your friends, the parent answers, may I speak to so and so, like these little polite things we all used to know how to do.
Yeah.
I just wonder, I'm a little fearful it's going to go away.
My daughter is busy with a project now, an art project, where she has to make a self-portrait from renewable material, recyclable materials. So my wife went to my parents-in-law's house, and she got a phone book. You remember phone books?
Yeah.
And we were reminiscing about this yesterday.
And map books.
Yeah. And like our kids has no idea what a phone book or a yellow pages or whatever it is. And I told my wife, like, when we were in school, I actually looked up her number in the phone book. That was something that's lost on this generation. It will never come back.
Yeah.
But anyway, this this conversation is quickly going into the dangers of social media, but it's great because that's something you specialize in. In like the social media as a tool for trafficking.
Well, trafficking is rarely, I think worldwide, it's less than 4% are the cases where someone's grabbed off the street.
Oh, really?
Thrown in a van and locked in a room.
Yeah.
That is less than 4%.
Sure.
Of how trafficking happens. It does happen, but it is lying to people.
Yeah.
It's for the false promises of employment, education, and a relationship.
Yeah.
And the relationship's what's going to get our younger group.
Yeah. And
then education as well. You're going to appeal to the parents. You're going to go to some place, some village, and say, "Don't you want a better life for your child? Give them to me. I see they have talent. Let's say playing soccer. I see they have talent. Bring them to me. We're going to take them. We're going to give them an education. We'll give them room and board. We're going to develop them as a soccer player.
Yeah.
And that's it. They're gone.
Yeah.
Doing labor or being used for organs or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's so easy to appeal to everybody and to communicate with technology.
Yeah.
Again, technology is not bad, but one person behind a desk, one groomer behind a desk can be grooming 100 people at a time.
Yeah.
And each of those 100 people think that one person is special to them.
Yes.
And it's not.
Yes.
So grooming can just work itself out so much easier.
Yeah.
Through technology. But yeah, trafficking, that's a myth I'd like to get out of people's heads.
Yes.
And I'm not saying, don't watch your children because they won't get kidnapped. I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah.
But it is, sometimes people are so worried about that.
Yes.
They think the kid is safe at home.
Yeah.
And they're not.
Yeah.
Because they're on devices.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where the predators are.
Yeah.
And so I want to dive a little bit more into, because this is something we didn't touch on at all with Wayne and Ian, is what's the system look like for a human trafficking ring? So obviously you have your buyers and your sellers, and you have your groomers, and there's obviously a couple of points of interest.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? Basically.
Yeah. So you have a bunch of different kind of call them suspect roles.
Yes.
So there is obviously kind of the seller, the buyer, the recruiter.
Yeah.
There's transporters.
Yes.
There's harborers.
Sure.
There's transfers, and I'm just naming the ones that are in the South African definition.
Yes.
In the law.
Yeah.
If you use services, say you go to a brothel or you're going to someplace and you think that they are victims of trafficking, you're using their services by having sex with what you might know that it's a prostituted person, but let's say you think that they're underage or trafficking victims, then you can get charged with trafficking. Sure. Not just with selling, buying prostitution. Yeah. Yeah. You have these big carriers. There's something called liability of carriers. So let's say an airline. Doesn't do a good job of or knows their employees isn't maybe checking the documents well, and trafficking victims are coming through, that airline can be charged.
Wow. That's good.
Yeah, no, it's great. The South African law is written brilliantly, like many of your laws.
But it's
here.
not necessarily.
It's not enforced.
Yeah, it's not enforced.
But part of the reason it's not enforced, I think, is a lot of people just don't know. Yeah. And that's something Unchained that God's really opened the doors for us this past year, is doing trainings and workshops and having conversations. And I've been invited. I've trained over 100 FCS, family and child services, those cops, DSD. I've had a little thing with Home Affairs recently, and that's where my heart is, because at the end of the day, I could go back to America or wherever God takes us next. And if I'm only doing raids and rescues, which are super fun and I like doing them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But then that stops.
Yes.
If I don't.
Yeah.
So we call it empowering those empower.
Yes.
That's what we're trying to do here. And we're getting more opportunity for that.
Yes.
But anyway, so there's, the trafficker, the role of the trafficker, going back to that, can be a lot of things.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily one person doing more than one role.
It can be, but there's going to be a lot of people involved.
Yes.
And then with the most successful rings are going to involve corrupt officials. Yeah. And then organized crime, because they can run for a long time. Yeah, exactly. So obviously the listeners of this show aren't necessarily, we're just a bunch of average Joes. It's dads and moms and obviously there are some people with some authority, or it might reach someone, but the average parent, what can we do to not eliminate it, but lessen the opportunity of this happening for their children? Yeah. It's be involved
or other children as well.
It's be involved in your kids' lives. Yeah. Be present, be physically present. We are human beings. We are meant to talk like this. Yes. That's how God wired our brains and our mind, and that's how He built us. We are not made to have a conversation with a 2D screen. Yeah. So I think that is easily the number one thing. Yeah. And then teach your kids. Like, don't be afraid to talk to your kids. I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, but do your kids know what you do?" And I'm like, my kids have known they've known about trafficking since they were 4. Sure. Because they brought it up in a Sunday school class, which is a little awkward, but they've heard terminology. My kids know what prostituted people are. Yes. And some people are like, "Oh," and I'm like, no, it's life.
Yes.
They need to know what's out there.
Yes.
They need to understand.
Yes.
You know, my kids will now ask me a lot of questions, and I only answer, I've learned this the hard way, don't answer beyond what they ask, right? Mm-hmm. Like I've gotten myself down a really bad rabbit hole one time. I was overthinking, and then I look, and my kids are both looking at me, and I thought, oh boy, I should stop.
Gone too far.
But sometimes we're awkward about it, and we're uneducated about it.
Yes.
And then that makes them know, okay, mom and dad, grandma, whoever, is not a safe person to talk to. Mm-hmm. And if they can't come to you, they're going to go to the friends. Yes. They're going to go to the internet. Yes. And we don't want that teaching our kids. Yes. So I just say teach your kids about some of this stuff really early. Yes. You know, don't be so afraid that they're going to talk to a stranger or say, let someone touch them that you don't talk to them about it. Yes. Because strangers aren't the ones who are sexually abusing our kids anyway. Yeah. It's family and acquaintances. Yeah. I think it's like 30% are family members, 60% of the suspects of child abuse, sex abuse, are acquaintances. Wow. So it's your neighbors, it's your whatever. And our kids just have to know. And here, South Africa is such a polite society. I talk about this a lot, especially compared to us rude Americans. But, you know, there's such respect that kids greet strangers. And I that's the opposite of what we do in America. And I kind of cringe every time that happens because there's a fine line between being polite and then not being able to say no because you respect an elder. Yes. We see that in cultures down here quite a bit. Yes. I can't tell my uncle no when he wants to touch me here because he's my elder. Yeah. And no one's going to believe me. Yeah. So it's just having these real conversations with your kids. Yeah. Being involved in your kids' lives. Yeah. Putting the technology away and just having real. Yes. Because they're learning from us. Yes. And if we're only doing this, then they're oh, that's how I must communicate with my friends because that's how mom does it.
I loved what you said. Like if they don't get it from you, they are gonna get it somewhere else.
They are gonna get it. There's a crazy statistic out there, and I don't mean crazy like it's untrue. It's true, but scary that they say if you haven't talked to your kids about pornography by age 9, they've probably already seen it.
Serious? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Through somebody else or whatever. And I think I heard that stat when mine. I think they were 9, and like that night I went home and we had a conversation. I said, all right, you know, let's talk about depending on their age, good touch, bad touch. Yeah. No one's allowed to show you these things. Yes. Because they're gonna get it from someplace else. Yeah. Big job being a parent.
Couple of conversations that I need to look.
Yeah, everyone's probably like, oh wait, I should back up and go. You know, I do the same. You know, I read these books and I hear these other experts and I quickly like, okay, I need to change the way I'm doing that right now.
But that's important.
Yeah. We have to. It's a continual learning lesson. Yeah. We have to. Yeah. Because technology and apps, it's all changing way faster than we can even handle. Yes. So we got to just keep up with it as best we can.
And that's why they call it disruptive, eh? Yeah. Because it disrupts your culture. Yeah. And like you said, the South African culture is like respect and listen. Yeah. And do what you're told.
And don't question it, right?
Exactly.
And so, we're having to teach because we've seen, you know, obviously seen other people, other peers of my age interact with their young kids. And I think, okay, what would we do in our culture? And not that there's a right or wrong, but how do I mean, obviously we're living here. So how do I blend this? I don't want them to be disrespectful to other adults. Yeah. But also, it's not ingrained in them. Yeah. It's a fine line. Something we have to talk about a lot as parents together.
Yeah. And that affirmation and love that your kids need, and that's something that Wayne brought up a lot. Like, tell your kids you love them. Show them you love them. Tell them they are beautiful. Tell them they are wanted and needed and necessary. And like, it's all biblical principles. Yeah. It's basically just do what the Bible says.
Yeah. And in that way, it's very simple, isn't it? But very difficult. Yeah. I had someone tell me the other day, it was such a good reminder. It was another parent and says, we can't compare what we did as kids to what our kids are now facing. Yeah. Because, you know, sometimes my husband and I are like, why can't they just sit still and listen, you know? And someone said, no, and it's true, a different generation, different genes have been passed down. Yeah. They're different, and we can't hold on to that although I say it all the time, when I was a kid, you know, we have to look at it differently because they're not going to respond to that, and it's just not their reality. Just like my reality wasn't my parents' reality.
Yeah.
So it was very humbling to hear that, and I thought, okay, no, she's right. I can't expect the same things.
Yeah.
I can expect good things.
Yeah.
But it might look a little different.
Yeah.
And I got to be okay with that.
Yeah. And wisdom, eh? We need wisdom.
Yeah.
I pray every day for God to give me wisdom. It's like, God, you said this is the one thing we can ask for and you'll give it freely.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, why am I not wise with my kids?
It's true. Oh, man. Being a parent is the hardest.
It is, eh? It is. But it was different. I don't know, obviously, like, what your childhood was like living in Nashville, but in Tennessee. But here in Pretoria, I grew up 5 kilometers from here. Spent my whole life here in this small radius. You know, we had some moves to like Bella Bella and the East Rand and stuff, but mostly here in Pretoria. And we would this topic would come up so much in discussions with people my age in these chairs. Like when we were young, we'd ride our bicycles up until like 2 a.m. and there was only one rule: you had to, when the street lights come on, we have to go
in by dark, eat supper.
Exactly. Just tell your parents you're okay. Just show face. Then you can go out again and play. We had every Friday night, we'd have a thing. Where my oldest brother, he lives in England now, would string lights outside of our home, and we'd call it like Liggies Aand.
Okay.
In Afrikaans now. I don't know if there's a good English term for it, but lights night.
Okay.
Friday night lights.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. And then we'd play games outside. We'd like, DoorDash. What do you call it in? Like cookies.
Oh, like a
ring,
ring
the
run
doorbell and run.
thing?
Yeah. But all that stuff,
Yeah, it's all done.
Our kids don't have that, But we can't expect it to be the same as what we had.
No, and you know what changed that? The 24-hour news cycle is what changed that.
Okay.
When that started coming out in like the 90s. Or whatever. And I'm not saying crime hasn't grown, but it's an interesting study to think, has crime grown or has our perception of crime changed?
Yes.
And with the 24-hour news cycle, all of a sudden we heard stories we would never hear.
Yes.
We heard stories from different parts of the country or even a different country.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden our minds thought crime is everywhere.
Yes.
Outside is unsafe.
Yes.
And that's when parents started bringing their kids in.
Yeah.
And again, this is not my own thought. I've read this from experts. And there's a book called The Anxious Generation. And he talks about childhood, play-based childhood, which is what we all used to have, to phone-based childhood.
Yes.
He talks a lot about, not unobserved, but like say unobserved play. Like your kids need to be able to play out of your sight, be safe, but without you watching, this helicopter parent thing.
Yes.
Because they have to take chances.
Yes.
They have to take risks.
Yes.
If they don't take risks at a young age, especially during puberty, that's when we think, oh no, that's when my kids. I don't want my kids taking risks, right? Teenage years, but it is important for their overall. It's important for their development.
Yeah.
But that's when our perception of everything got really scary, and we did this.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting to think about.
Yeah. And I like what you said about like letting your kids take risks. And I saw this thing about Jordan Peterson the other day, and he said the worst thing a parent can do is, when your kid climbs to the top of the playground.
Don't freak out.
Yeah, just leave him.
Yeah. Kids know. Most of the time, kids know their ability.
Yeah.
They're not going to go higher than what they can do if you're talking about a playground.
Yeah.
I came out the other day and I was looking for, they had thrown something up on the roof, like a frisbee. And one had a pool noodle, which was never going to get it, but was down there having a pool noodle trying to get it. Yeah. And I heard the other child, didn't know where it was, looked up higher than the roof in a tree.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, okay, I was like, this is fine. Can you get down? She was like, yeah. I said, okay, cool.
Yeah, sure.
Holler if you can't. I'm going back inside.
Yeah.
Because they can get themselves up, most of the time they can get themselves back down. But it's important for them to test those limits and boundaries. Because if they don't do that later on, then how are they going to be a proper adult if they don't know how to challenge themselves?
But it also shows them that you trust them.
Yeah.
To make good decisions.
Yeah. I mean, if I think for a second, oh my gosh, if she falls from that height, she's dead.
Yeah.
Like that thought came in for just a second.
Yeah.
But what am I gonna do? I can't, you know.
Yeah, I tell people like when your kids are small, like toddlers, they climb on tables and they climb on everything, and my mom, it's always the mom, it's like the mom is like, so it's refreshing to me that to hear that you are like giving your kids some rope, but it's like, no, get him down from there, he's gonna fall, or like no. And I used to tell my mom or my mom-in-law, like, he's only going to fall once.
Yeah.
He's not going to fall again.
Yeah.
If he gets
he's going to learn from that fall.
Exactly.
And
that's why. It's not that he's going to get hurt so much that he can't get on top of it, but he's going to get hurt. He's going to fall on his bum maybe or on his leg, and it's going to hurt, and he's going to cry, and he's never going to, if he climbs back up,
he'll do it differently. Yeah. He'll do it better.
Exactly.
He'll do it better. Isn't that the point?
Exactly.
He's going to do better. You got to learn from your mistakes, because life is full of sometimes just a string of bad mistakes.
Yeah.
But you rarely do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So just on this note, on this point and topic, I'm thinking like, because my kids love Roblox as well. Like they love it. They play with their friends, and so we monitor it quite closely, and when they play, I usually go and sit there.
That's good. That's what I was going to say.
I can check everything. I sit there and I work, but I check. Like I check the TV. I check the small ones on the phone, maybe my daughter or whatever, and there's a game on Roblox called Brookhaven.
Okay. And
it's basically this neighborhood, and it's just a bunch of people running around doing silly things. And at first, I thought like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. But then I realized this is what we did as kids.
In real life.
Exactly. Yeah. So now they're getting that experience. And that's why they are so drawn to it. Because that's what we had when we were kids. Run around in the streets, riding bicycles, whatever. And we, in Pretoria, probably in Tennessee, the same thing, you had a lot of like ranches and farms and whatever. And
that space.
Yeah, and we would, drive motorcycles and go-karts and, just fool around in the streets and, like I said, like ring people's bells and run away and, get threatened with being shot and all that stuff.
That actually happened to me in our house here in Joburg.
Oh, yeah?
I heard the gate bell.
Yeah.
And by the time I get to it, there's no one there. And then later on our community group, it said some kids are doing that. And I was like,
that's awesome.
I'm totally unbothered by that.
Yeah.
Like, that's just kids being kids.
Yeah.
And you brought up a good point about being there. One of the simplest things I tell parents is that no devices in the room. Like, if my kids are watching TV, they're not playing games yet, but if they're watching TV, it's not on a tablet in their room where I can't see it, unless they're like sick or something. But otherwise, I say go watch it in the main room so that as I'm walking by,
you can check. Yeah.
I can check it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the simplest things. And I've had so many parents say, but they'll lose it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, you were still the parent, and you're only the parent for this amount of time.
Yeah.
And you gotta protect their brain. It's not having fun. My kids ask me all the time, when are we gonna get a phone? And I said, please stop asking me that, because it's going to push you off further and further.
Yeah.
And I said, it's going to depend on your maturity level.
Yeah.
There's no magic number.
Yeah.
But now, since reading that thing, I kind of say, look, at 14, maybe we'll have a discussion.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And there's battles to be won, with phones and stuff, and it's not a good thing. And I saw it with my daughter, so I can speak from experience. And we're on a good place now. Like weekends, she can have a phone, but she has it with us.
Yeah.
She doesn't have it alone or in a room or anything like you said. And then Sunday night comes, she goes and she puts the phone back in my wife's cupboard, and then she can get it again on Friday. And then on rare occasions when she has like a school trip or something, we'd send the phone with her so we can keep in touch or whatever. But again, it's like seeing that in her, like, because the other day I was looking for her phone, and I couldn't find it, and I was like, you know, I started getting worried, like, where's the phone? Did you take it to school and stuff? And I asked her that afternoon, like, where's your phone? She said, no, I went and put it in the cupboard last night. It's like, okay, cool. You know, that's cool. Out of her own maturity, she went and put the phone where it should be, and that was a good sign.
Yeah, when you show your kids some trust, like I know I was thinking of when you're talking about running around the neighborhood. I let our kids the other day go for a bike ride by themselves, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I'd have done this had I not read this book." Like a year ago, I was like, But I was like, okay, I thought to myself, what are the risks? Okay, we live in a very safe place.
Yeah.
You know, it's a boomed off area. You know, it's not like got big gates or anything. But I said, okay, I told them, so I'm going to trust you guys. You stay together, and I need you back in 10 minutes. Check in with me. If you're back at 10 minutes and 5 seconds, you will not do this again for a very long time, you know? And it was, and they liked it because they had their little watches and they could set a timer and it became a thing. And yeah, it was a really cool trust exercise. And they couldn't believe I was letting them do it.
Yeah.
And I thought, they have to be away from me making choices.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not 5 or 6, you know, they're a little bit older, but they're not teenagers yet either, they're tweens.
Yeah.
And I just thought they have to be able to do this in life.
Yeah.
And I'm doing them a disservice if I don't. But it's being there for them.
Yeah.
You know, we can't be so afraid of trafficking or so afraid of kidnapping that, you know, just keep them next to us the whole time.
Yeah.
It's doing them a disservice.
I agree. I want to ask you a specific question about grooming. One of the questions or one of the stories that I got, and I hope the lady is okay if I share it, but she sent me a private message on TikTok telling basically the story of how her 2 sisters got molested by their uncle, and the mom was actually defending the uncle,
Happens
the
all
brother,
the time.
and like telling her kids to apologize to him for coming out, and then a couple of years later it happened to her.
Okay.
And so I think that's something that's very important for people to be aware of. Like, what are there any specific signs that people can look out for, like when it comes to your brother or your uncle or your whatever?
It's hard to see the signs in the suspect necessarily, but the victims are going to change.
Yes.
Once you've been abused, or if you're continually molested, like, you know, loss of like if they don't like the things they used to like. So they used to do a bunch of sport and now they're reserved and they don't want to do sports.
Okay.
Or they used to love to draw and they just don't. When they don't like the things they used to not like, that is one of the biggest signs.
Yeah.
When I talk to parents of primary school children, and when I talk to the kids themselves, I say, you know, I kind of show them my hand. I said, you need to have 5 people you can trust, one for each finger, and not all 5 can be in your family.
Yeah. For
that reason, right there.
Yeah.
You need to have someone, a teacher, or your best friend's mom, or somebody, maybe someone outside your culture. Sometimes cultures protect themselves, right? They say, no, that'll never happen here.
Yes.
Have a variety of people you can trust to go and tell. Because if this person doesn't believe you, and this person doesn't, you have someone else to go talk to. The grooming stages, they're gonna. The first one is targeting. And they're often going to target within their own family because they know them. You know, kids are not. Kids are not. They got access. Kids are not going to go in a room by themselves, maybe with a stranger. Yeah. But if Uncle says, "Come here, I got a piece of chocolate. Don't want to show your brother," kid's going to go. I know candy's a big funny stereotype, but whatever the case may be. And then they're gonna fulfill the need for somebody. Maybe it's attention, and that's what's happening online. They're just people thinking their parents don't understand, or maybe they're going through a divorce or something, and they're just spitting out their emotions, and other people are listening to them, and that's what everyone, not just teenagers, everyone wants just someone to listen to them. So kind of fulfilling the need, and then there's isolation and desensitization.
So would that thing that they stop doing be tied to that person or not necessarily?
No, not necessarily. No. It's they're feeling that maybe that now they're now insecure, or they're traumatized, or they're whatever, and they just aren't going to go do, enjoy the things.
Yes.
And I mean, that's a sign of depression too, right? You don't enjoy the things you used to.
Yeah.
So when you see that kind of thing, new set of friends, that's a big one. If they don't hang out with people they used to, now, friendships are going to change, but sometimes isolation's taking place. Maybe by a new boyfriend. They're using the lover boy method of grooming to get them. Isolation it's like kind of step 4 of the grooming process. So, but it all starts with targeting and then friendship. And when there's an acquaintance or somebody, they don't really have to do that friendship phase anymore because it already exists.
Yes.
So the trust is already kind of there.
Sure.
So
Okay, cool. Is there any specific stories you can share with us? Like something that stood out to you maybe, or?
Like just like cases or something here in.
That you are allowed to speak about.
Yeah, no, I've got one that the case is over, and it's a big success story. So I like to share it, but it happened. I'll still leave some details out. But it happened just here east of Pretoria, and it was a cult, a religious cult, and we've run into that several times.
Wow.
Because of the mindset. You talk about grooming. Who doesn't want to believe their pastor, especially when their pastor is abusing it, saying, God told me to do this, XYZ. So some people kind of married into the cult because it's an honor to marry the son of a pastor or a nephew or whatever. So, and then, parents are all in because this is a man of God, and they got used for kind of domestic servitude and for sex. And these women were just so resilient. I could not believe it. Because I knew of this case a year before anything happened with it. Because it's such closed off. I couldn't get any new information. And when the other relatives in another province feed me information of stuff she knew months ago, I said, look, this is old information. I can't go to the cops. They're not going to be able to do anything with this. Who knows if they even still live there? Who knows what's happening? But anyway, we did go, and I got some new information. The person took her SIM card out, put a new one in, on the toilet, locked bathroom, called me and started whispering. And I said, are you so-and-so? And she said, yes. And I could not believe I was talking to her in person. But the relative had given her my number. Said, whenever you can call, call this person. Called us. And then the cops were on board. And, Wayne helped me find the right cops to kind of go in and do this thing. And they let me go along, which I loved. And it kind of turned into a hostage situation. And, the person's inside messaging me like he's getting violent. Things are getting worse. And what I never forget, she said, don't leave. And to me, I thought, as if we're going to leave. I'm out here with 12 cops on the side of the road. We are not going anywhere. But she's had people come to the door before.
And leave.
Interview, not separate, not interview well. And then she's forced to say, yeah, everything's fine. And I promised her, I said, there's no way we are leaving here without you. We will not do that. And then, eventually got in and walked out with her and her son and another woman, and just amazing. They're in another part of South Africa now, and she's got a job, and the boy's doing well. And whenever I go to that side, I've got to see them since. And it's just because often you don't get to see a story through. Maybe you're part of a raid and rescue, but maybe you don't know what's really happening with them. But I get messages, and that's really nice.
And this was a pastor.
And then in that pastor's family was a corrupt cop. Which did a lot. Because actually in that hostage situation, like while they were inside, she said he's calling
his brother.
He's calling the relative, calling the bad cop or whatever.
The bad cop,
And I remember telling the cops we had, I said, do we have backup on the way? They said, yeah. I said, because so do they. I said, can we please make sure ours get here first?
But could you catch everyone? Like, could you expose the entire thing?
So we were trying to, and we're trying to in the case. And this case was big, and like I said, it was years of abuse. But it was really hard. So the pastor actually before that night had ended up dying. I won't say how because I don't want to lead people to all the details. But so then you're dealing with maybe not the main perpetrator. And then it got a little harder to investigate. And then what I learned in that is that a lot of the police officers did not want to believe that this was trafficking.
Yes.
Maybe they felt more comfortable with kidnapping. Yes. I said, fine, open a kidnapping case.
Yes.
I'll help you change it later because I know it's trafficking. Yes. But I understand that it's really overwhelming for police. Yeah. Trafficking is a huge thing and they don't know how to deal with it. Yeah. Again, which is why my heart is to train them.
So trafficking is actually a very broad term for a lot of different things.
It can be. It shouldn't be. I mean, trafficking can encompass a lot. And if you know the law, there's a lot of stuff that fits into trafficking that you may not think it does. Yes. But at the same time, it's almost a trendy buzzword, unfortunately. Yeah. So I've been on some radio interviews and TV interviews where they want to talk about, missing persons in trafficking. And what was the other one? The other one was smuggling and kidnapping. And the first thing I did, smuggling and trafficking, is I defined for them the difference. Yes. I said, look, I'm not saying this isn't trafficking. It's at least smuggling. Here are the differences because people get them confused and think it's all smuggling is trafficking. Yeah. That's absolutely not true. Yes. Yes. So you have to understand the law really well to understand because it can turn. Yeah. It can be kidnapping and turn into trafficking.
Yeah. And how is the media's response on these cases?
So I've had some really good questions from them lately, and I've really appreciated it because a couple of them have said, "Why are we still dealing with this problem?" Yes. Like, we've been hearing about this for years. We have these cases. It keeps coming up. Why are we still dealing with it? And that was like one of my favorite questions. And I said, the reason you're dealing with it is because no one's doing anything beyond the headline. Yes. It's a quick headline. Great. 15 caught in Kempton Park. Yeah. Traffickers. Yeah. And if you were to follow that case, it falls apart often. Yeah. Unchain Our Children's fortunate enough to sit on a task team, provincial task team against trafficking. So sometimes I get to hear about some of these cases, and some of them do go on, but a lot of the stuff just never amounts to anything. Yes. It falls apart because it ends up on a corrupt person's desk. Yeah, and it gets pushed away. Yeah. Or someone just doesn't know what to do about it. Yeah. So the accountability, again, it all boils down to accountability for me there.
So are you guys restricted on revealing these people? Because I think, isn't that something that will help? Like revealing people.
Like the corrupt officials.
Anyone involved. Like, because again,
it depends on if we're working a case on it or not. So I understand that. Yeah. Yeah. So we've got a pretty intense one going on now that I'm involved with, and it involves a lot. Yeah. And so that's pretty tight-lipped because there are corrupt officials involved. Yeah. And someone has leaked a name, and when you hear that, and then I think as an investigator, I think I know who leaked it because I only told 2 of you. Yeah. So that even while you're working the case, you have to kind of filter a lot of stuff in. Yeah. But if we can catch them, by all means, spread it far and wide, let it be a lesson. Yes. But also because of retaliation in this country, everyone's really nervous to do that. Yeah. Because the justice system isn't accountable. Yeah. Most of the time. Then let's say I out an official and they kill my family. Am I ever going to get justice for that? I don't know. Yeah. Probably not. Yeah. So that's the fine line everyone's trying to walk. Yeah. Sure. So unless we have a tight case, if I can get them arrested behind bars, that's the way we want to out them.
Yeah. So you guys are part of the prevention and the cure.
Yeah, try to be. Yeah. I guess so. Yeah. No, Unchain Our Children is so unique. Like I said, I've worked with a bunch of different NGOs, either very closely or just as part of a group, and we're one of the only ones that does direct intervention, which makes sense if you think that Wayne and I were cops. Yeah. That's our MO.
Yeah.
Which is why we get along so well, and Unchain Our Children was such a good fit for me.
Yeah.
Even though it's local, not international, not necessarily an international organization. And I came from so far, but this is, it's where I feel like we can use our skills and really do something. Because a lot of people want to help, and a lot of people are good at dealing with the victims, helping them with trauma and counseling. That's all needed. But there's not so many who are so understand the law like we do.
Yeah.
So.
Sure. Yeah.
That was a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's so much to chew on, and it's all new to me. Like it's all new to me.
Yeah.
But I think there were some very good points. Like parents have an incredibly important role to play.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah.
The most important role.
Yeah.
The most important role.
Yeah. So just do your job.
And it's hard. As a parent, I'm not saying it's easy. It's not.
It isn't easy, but it's worth it. And it's like just on the one thing that you said, parents thinking my kid's going to lose it, like let them lose it because you might lose her or him.
Yeah.
And that's way more important.
Yeah.
Like keeping your kids than...
Yeah, we can't be their friend. I hope me and my children stay friends throughout their teenage years.
Yeah.
But they may not.
Yeah.
But that's not my job.
Yeah.
My job is to always be their parent. And like I said, their brain isn't developed. They're not thinking. They're gonna think, who knows what of me.
Yeah.
But us having that experience, and this is just the gift God's given us, is them.
Yeah.
And being a parent is a privilege.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to be and can't be, right? So like it's a privilege. And gotta look for their future.
We have to. Amy, any final thoughts? Like if you wanted to say something that would change someone's life?
No pressure. Changing people's lives.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking like Wayne, you and Wayne, like you said, two peas in a pod, because he said to me over the phone just like a couple of hours ago, we can't be their friends. First and foremost, we are their parents. And he said one other thing that he asked me, like, I want this point to come out, like, if you see or know or think of anything, talk about it.
Yes. No, we can't be afraid to have those hard discussions. That's the big thing. They just got to understand, like, kids got to know that their bodies are theirs. And they got to know the purpose of sex. They have to know all these hard things we don't want to talk about. I think a lot of our generation probably, our parents weren't as open as we need to be. Yeah. And maybe that's our issue. Yeah. That we're as closed off as our parents were. Yeah. So in that way we are more open, but it doesn't mean we're our kid's best friend. Yeah. And a lot of the parents who've gotten the most trouble with, like, maybe their kids, we've seen that with kids who've been sextorted or kids who ended up committing suicide. Their parents famously would say, they would be the ones to say, but I know, I watched their phone. They told me everything. They would never. Those, if you hear that from somebody, I would have a red flag go up. Because kids are very good at hiding stuff.
Yeah, they are.
But I would say, be in the child's life. Yeah. You got to do what's best for them. Only you know that, not them.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. And I told my wife the other day, I don't care if my kids like me or not. Yeah.
No, I've had to tell mine that too.
They will be thankful one day. Yeah. For the things that I do now. And it is hard. It's difficult to be the bad guy, in their eyes. It's difficult, but I can only now see why my parents did certain things. Things that I hated them for. Yeah. Things that I literally at that moment hated them for. And now I'm like, I'm grateful,
But you want your kids to respect you, not like you. Yeah, and that's a big difference. Yes. Because someone who says yes all the time, they might like it. But is any kid gonna, are they respecting anybody who just says yes all the time? Yeah. No, they actually do respect boundaries. They actually, internally, they may not admit it, but they want it. Yeah. That they need the boundaries. Yeah. But if you're just open about it, why? But if you just say, because I said so, which I've totally caught myself saying before.
Yeah,
and I
me
thought,
too.
oh, that's like the worst thing you could say.
Yeah.
But if you say, no, this is why. I don't want you to keep asking me about a phone or take pictures on my phone because already I can see all you do is want a phone. If you want pictures, I'll get you an old school digital camera. Take all the pictures you want. My kids are very creative, and I want them to, they're like making a documentary about a bird in the nest. And I was trying to give them an old video camera so they could have it.
Yes.
Because I just want them to realize there's technology and then there's a trap of a phone does everything for me.
Yes.
So trying to separate the two.
Yes.
So yeah.
Cool. Amy, thank you so much
for
coming.
Thank you.
Chatting to us.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it was a good chat.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, and it wasn't I'm glad it wasn't as serious.
I feel like we went off. I feel like we went all over the show.
I think it's important because, you know, we touched on all the specific trafficking stuff in the video with Wayne. And this was I think this would be a lot more valuable for parents because, and that's my audience. Yeah. You know, it's parents.
Well, and it's not the do's and don'ts of trafficking because there's so much more. It is your relationship with your child.
Yeah. So exactly, and one thing Wayne also said is like you guys aren't in the business of exposing. You guys are in the business of helping people. You know, it's not trying to remind people of their worst mistakes.
No.
It's like helping them not make those mistakes anymore. It's like, and that was cool to me. Yeah. Yeah, obviously we need to be aware of this, and you don't have to fight the way Amy and Wayne and Nikki and Ian and whoever is fighting it. The way you can fight it is like just being a present, loving, caring parent.
Yep.
And then you do your part because you eliminate the possibility of your kids ending up on their documents.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Cool. Amy, thank you so much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
I'll again add, everything in the description. Ek sê hierdie goed gewoonlik in Afrikaans, julle.
He can speak in Afrikaans now. Go ahead.
No, I'll finish in English. Finish strong. No, everything will be in the description. You guys can reach Unchain Our Children by the details down below. And thank you for tuning in. And we're actually on just last point is Wayne and I are thinking about doing this on a regular basis.
Excellent.
Like just for trafficking and grooming and awareness and to our parents and all that stuff. So that's something you guys can look forward to, and we might have Amy back at another stage.
Brush up on the English.
Yeah. So was it bad?
No, you're fantastic. Way better than I would have been in Afrikaans. So well done.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you in the next episode. Cheers.